Welcome back to the 10-minute Bitcoin show. Gonna have you guys out of here before the next block. This is an interesting one, guys. I've been doing just some deep research on old Bitcoin talk threads and old like GitHub PRs and stuff like that because I'm trying to get a better lay of the land because there's a lot of things in Bitcoin politics that were just before my time. There were a lot of conversations I wasn't privy to. There's a lot of history that I wasn't around for. And I gotta be honest here. I feel like I have probably misrepresented Luke Dash Jr. in some ways. I'm quite surprised to learn that he, generally speaking, has not really been inconsistent. I would say that Luke is many things, but he is not inconsistent when it comes to his position on certain issues that he holds today with regards to how Bitcoin should work. And now where it becomes a little bit messier, and I probably won't be able to get through all of this in 10 minutes because this is a lot. I have like 50 tabs open on this browser right now of like various Bitcoin talk threads. But I do want to like make it clear that I think I've probably misrepresented Luke as someone that has like recently flipped on certain issues. That isn't the case at all. At least as far as I can see, going back as far as like 2014, Luke was very clearly advocating for the positions that he has now, which is that miners have a responsibility to filter out abuses. Bitcoin is not an arbitrary data storage protocol. And what's the other thing? Oh, yeah. He doesn't consent to storing data that he doesn't approve of in the blockchain. Just because people can put that data in there, that doesn't mean that he consents to storing it in his node. There's a lot of nuance here to tease out. It's really quite interesting to me. And what's very interesting to me is that the battle lines for the nature of the technical conversation and the nature of the protocol itself has evolved. But Luke's position actually has remained remarkably consistent through the years with this. What I will point out here is that these debates over Opportune back in 2014 were largely focused on the way that a shitcoin protocol was trying to use Bitcoin data at the time. It was called Counterparty. It's XCP. And I've covered this a little bit in the past. But basically, Counterparty wanted Opportune relay limits to be raised from 40 bytes to 80 bytes, or to not be decreased from 80 bytes to 40 bytes, something in that realm. Because the alternative was them using a more harmful method of data encoding, which was opcheck multisig, I think, which I think is bare multisig. They were doing some other method of encoding data to get the amount of data that they needed in order to facilitate what they wanted to do with Counterparty. Now, I'm not advocating for Counterparty. I think Counterparty was probably pretty dumb. I don't know a ton about it, but I think it was just shitcoins on Bitcoin. I think that was all it was. Where the fundamental breakdown is for me is that Luke has always kind of had this position that he can in some way, shape, or form have control over the way other people use this Sybil resistant data blob timestamping system, which, yes, I fundamentally do agree that the purpose of this system is for facilitating financial transactions, but the nature of the protocol is such that it's permissionless timestamping of data blobs, where as long as you're willing to pay the fee to get the data into the block, you can come up with a limitless number of ways of stuffing data into that block if you are so inclined and motivated to do so. And you can see going through these threads from 2014 where Luke is arguing with the Counterparty people who, mind you, like as I've said, I have nothing in common with these people. I'm under no delusions. And like Vitalik was one of these people too. One of his justifications allegedly for why he created his own fork of Bitcoin and added Turing completeness scripting on top of it. One of the justifications he claims is that it seemed like Bitcoin core developers were so hostile to protecting Opportune that it made him feel like he wasn't able to work within the constraints of the protocol. But there was other nonsense baked in there too. Like if you go and read the Ethereum white paper, one of the drawbacks of Bitcoin, according to Vitalik, was that it lacked Turing completeness. Now, if you know anything about how Bitcoin works and you know what Turing completeness means, you would know that that's a terrible idea. You would know that Bitcoin is designed intentionally to be Turing incomplete, because you wouldn't want infinite loops in a system with asynchronous state like Bitcoin has. Bitcoin has to constantly reconcile state, and there's a reason that you can't just have infinite loops in the system, because it would be an easy way to drain, like, malicious smart contracts could just like take all your money. And that's exactly what happened with the DAO hack. It just took advantage of the fact that Ethereum was Turing complete, and then they had to fork the chain and create Ethereum Classic and all this nonsense. But that's all beside the point. I just want to make it clear that I don't want to try to misrepresent anybody. I don't want to lie. That is not my goal or my intention at all. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the truth of the matter. I'm trying to understand this complex protocol. There's some interesting argument. There's a something here. Oh, this guy. So I like a lot of this guy's responses to the things that Luke has to say here, because basically what was going on in 2014 was Luke was coming up with filters to filter out the types of data embedding that he didn't like. And there were a lot of people that were upset about this because their argument was that it violated the nature of the permissionless aspect of the protocol, because of the fact that certain people were using the protocol in ways that Luke didn't consent to or didn't approve of. His argument was that that was abuse and that it shouldn't be tolerated, and that in the context of Opportun, it's interesting too, right? Because if we remember from 0.90, if we go and read the patch notes for why Opportun was standardized in the first place, the argument was not, we want Bitcoin to be used as an arbitrary data storage protocol. The argument was, if you go and read the release notes, people are already using Bitcoin as a data storage protocol. Not that we want them to, nor do we recommend it, but we would prefer that they use Opportun instead, because Opportun doesn't bloat the UTXO set. So the argument that was happening in 2014 on these Bitcoin talk threads was people saying, look, just let us use Opportun, just let Opportun be big enough to facilitate what we need to do with it, so that we don't have to use these more harmful methods, because we'd prefer not to use the more harmful methods. And Luke's attitude there was one of scorched earth, which was that I don't consent to this being on the blockchain, period, and I don't think that you have a right to do it. Therefore, I'm not going to support your ability to do it in a less harmful way. Let's see if I can find. So Luke's position here is, it's abuse because you're forcing others to download and store data against their free choice. Every full node must download the full blockchain, prunable or not. Every full node has consented to download and store financial transactions. Not every full node has consented to store anything else. You need 100% consensus for this, not merely some subset or even a majority. So if I'm being honest, I think that this is a person who's completely out of touch with reality. I think this is a person who has been consistently out of touch with reality for the last 11 years, at least, based on these receipts that I've been able to track down. This is just simply not true. Like, when you use Bitcoin, you are using it with the understanding that it's a permissionless system and anybody else can use it however they want. And you're really limited in your capacity to force other people to behave certain ways within the context of that permissionless system. And you know full well that you're downloading a blockchain that includes lots of things you might not agree with, lots of uses of that data that you might not approve of. But it's a permissionless system. Like it's either permissionless for everybody, or everything has to go through this one guy, and he gets to decide whether or not it's something he approves of. So while I will give Luke the credit of saying that he has been remarkably consistent on this issue, I will say he's also been consistent on this point that he should be the one that gets to decide what does and doesn't go into the blockchain. I don't think that it's compatible with the idea of a permissionless open source protocol where anybody can pay to timestamp data, right? Like, fundamentally, that's all that Bitcoin is. And we need to be clear about that so that we don't get lost in the weeds trying to advocate for like these really, really weird policies that actually constrain the network and create second order effects that are undesirable, like miner centralization.